Welcome to the Ordinary Black Professionals. I'm Nicole,
And I'm Stefan.
and this week we're doing part two of what it's like to be a contractor. So we'll be talking less about the logistics and the practicalities of a contractor and talking more around the realities and day-to-day life of it. So Stefan will be bearing more and more of his soul as we go along into part two.
Yeah. Okay.
So let's just dive straight in. Did you have any expectations at all around what life was going to be like as a contractor and how it may differ from a perm role?
Um, I didn't actually have any expectations because it was my first role
Right,
being a contractor. So in some ways, I just went in and I went with the flow.
right, okay,
Yeah.
okay. So you was kind of easy going then.
Yeah. 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 I was sort of allowing the experience to take me in the direction that it was going to take me, right?
So kind of your first year of contracting, how was it different to a traditional permanent role? Did it differ at all?
It was different in the sense of, when you join a new company, you have to go through onboarding
Yeah,
and you may do a few days of that. There was none of that. They
right,
literally, as I joined on the first day, um, they gave me my laptop pretty soon, within an hour, and they said, go off to the project that you're going to be working on. And so I just had to go and travel to that project and meet the people that I was meant to meet.
right.
So it was very direct, more direct than I expected it to be. I expected a bit more of an introduction, bit more of a understanding of how they do things or the company. But yeah, it was just straight in. And I think all of my other contracts were similar as well. It was, straight in. Um, but once I was there, it was similar to a perm role in the fact that I
How
was,
the work
yeah,
was and how the team operated and
how the
things
team
like that.
operated. Yeah, I was there every day. Um, I did the work, just going through normal project work, just yeah. So in some sense, it was very similar to perm job once you're there. Yeah, but I still have to do things like invoicing and
Yeah,
the other
yeah.
stuff.
But they
Yeah,
were, but your day, I more meant your life in the office.
yeah,
That was pretty much standard, so no real difference there.
yeah.
Okay. Did you feel like a contractor in your first contracting job?
Yes.
Okay, so you felt it was very much me and them being the permanent employees.
Well, I didn't. It's not necessarily me and them. I don't think you feel that way as a contractor. I don't think most contractors feel that.
Okay.
But it's you do feel like a contractor because you have to do some things differently. There are some conversations that you're not involved in,
Yeah.
and there are also the way that they can treat you sometimes will be slightly different. Like they'll bring you into certain conversations or they'll completely exclude you.
Right. And I guess it would make sense why they would bring you into some conversations and exclude you from others,
Yeah,
because ultimately
I'm not an employee.
you're not an employee. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. You don't have skin in the game. There's no reason for you to be part of certain conversations.
Mm,
Because as we mentioned in the first episode or the part one, is that you are there as a contractor to do a specific type of job, complete certain activities,
yeah.
and that's kind of it. You're not there to, win additional work or get involved in anything that's outside of your like the reasons you've been brought in.
And I think I had to learn that lesson when I was there.
Oh, okay.
Because in the first one I came in, I thought that just like in all my previous jobs, I can take a little bit of responsibility. I can do my job in a way that I used to do it,
Mm,
and I tried to, take control of some situations and try and work with people to deliver work just
mm,
directly, and they wanted me to work indirectly. So they wanted me to sort of ask a guy, oh, is there any work I could do? And he would go ask another guy, and he would go and ask another guy.
right.
And I didn't really work that way. I like to just talk straight to the source and be like, so let's work together.
Yeah.
And that's not usually how I would work. So I had to learn that lesson. Like I've come in to do the job exactly how they want me to do it, and there was no other. I kind of learned on that role. There was no other.
Options,
Yeah,
alternatives. Yeah, like
for me to
yeah,
to work.
you had to deliver the work in that one particular way. You can't kind of deviate and do something else.
Yeah, and I have a style that I like to work with,
Mm,
certain people, and yeah, I just I had to do it their way. And when I tried to do it my way, it didn't work out. So
Would you say that was one of the challenges that you had? Like I know you said it's a lesson learned, but was that also
yeah,
a challenge for you?
it was a challenge, like especially that communication thing. You really do realize we talked about an episode earlier about company culture, and you really do realize how when you do contracting, you go and work for these different companies and how their cultures are so different.
Mm,
Like that communication thing, because this company was so hierarchical, people really held on to their power. So if I went
mm,
to try and have a direct conversation with somebody, people would be pissed.
mm.
I cannot speak to that guy over there, even though he's just over there. I have to go through you. And I had to learn that lesson. And I thought, it's not a bad thing about contracting. It's just how you choose your contracts.
Mm.
Because if I had known that, then it would have been good for me not to probably go work there. Maybe somebody else would have. But, I had to learn that lesson.
But I think also as a contractor, in theory, there's no way you would have been able, I don't know what questions you would have been able to ask in the interview to know that that's how the company culture was. Because if you're
Yeah.
just there for a 6 month period, 3 month period, whatever it is, it just feels like your style of working and what you want to do and all of that stuff, you have to really put aside and just keep reminding yourself you're just there to do that particular job and to keep it moving. You know, when you hear
Yes.
people say, "Oh, I only want to rock up to work, do my job, and leave. I don't want to get into politics, don't care about promotion, I don't want to make friends."
Yeah.
It's almost that kind of mindset. It's like,
Well,
I'm
it
just
was
here to do
similar.
this and leave.
It was similar because it's not like I was trying to get into politics or anything like that. But I think there were some questions, like we like mentioned in the previous episode, there were some questions maybe I could have asked.
Mm.
Like, how do you want me to deliver the work? What kind of responsibility do you want me to take on?
But for your
Those kind of
first,
questions, like they would have said, "Oh, we want you to work independently and to
yeah,
take control and to really drive this piece
okay,
of work." If they said something like that, then I could walk in with a bit of confidence saying, "Oh, they want me
that's
to
true.
drive a piece of work," and then I would have felt confident about that. But I
Yeah.
walked in to this one not really knowing, and it happened to be they didn't really need me there
Mm,
because this was another consultancy company, and sometimes in some cases people are trying to fill seats, people are trying to fill budgets,
mm.
so they need certain number of people, and I feel like at that time I was filling a seat. They had enough people and they had people doing certain jobs. So
Okay, that's interesting. Did you feel like you could take the experiences and the challenges that you had in the first project and take that and apply that onto your other contracting roles that you had?
yeah, yeah. So I mean, I tried to just learn as I was going along. The first
Yeah.
one, I just took that job. I didn't know too much of what they wanted me to do. I knew what they were working on. I didn't know too much of how they wanted me to impact them.
Mm,
The second one that I took, I made sure that I knew what they wanted
right.
me to
Okay.
do. So yeah, I tried to learn and make sure I didn't make the same mistake twice.
And then just going back to the challenges, just kind of taking the contracting experience as a whole, are there any other kind of challenges that you would say that you experienced? We know we discussed not always like the company culture and maybe not having a clear idea of exactly the level of influence and impact or how you were going to deliver the work and we discussed some others but as a whole the challenges.
Yeah, HR, I think I talked about HR before and how there is no HR for a
Mm.
contractor. And I really learned that lesson while I was there. It was a challenge.
But
So,
if you was a perm employee, would you have used HR though?
I mean, that's a good question. Would I have used HR? Um, I think I would have had, whether I used HR or not, I would have had more options to complain to certain people, maybe more options to talk directly to a manager or maybe some sort of career coach or a mentor or someone else in the business. Um, But as a contractor, you feel that there's very little point in doing anything like that. I mean, they could ask you to leave tomorrow, so there's very little point in doing that.
Yeah.
So yeah, just it was not a lesson learned, but it was a reminder that, at least for me, if you're black and you're in the industry, we already know that the IT industry is not very diverse, and that can be an issue if you are black and in contracting.
Okay, so
Yeah,
do you want to expand a bit more on that? What specifically are you talking about?
yeah. I think I had to get reminded that no matter where you go, racism can follow you anywhere. And when I was in certain positions, in certain roles, I I definitely got that feeling that I was unwanted here. Um, there were situations where um, people would uh, leave me without a job to do, or they would not give me roles, or they would not give me information that they would give to other people
This is
in the roles.
this is in your contracting
In yeah,
experience, yeah.
in the experience that I had contracting, um, and I was excluded from situations not because I'm a contractor, but because um, I believe that probably they didn't want me there, yeah, for whatever reason. So, and this is not necessarily from the people that hired me directly, but this is from the people that are in the environment, the people that you're working with day to day, right? So, there are situations, especially when early on, I was hired alongside other people, sometimes perm people. Some were contractors, some were perm, and the people that I was hired with were given certain information. They were told about events that would benefit them. They were told about company trips that people were taking at certain times or conferences. And there was a particular time where uh, the majority of the company or the majority of the project went to a conference and nobody had informed me. So I walked into the office and it was very empty,
Right.
right? And I didn't realize that my entire team had gone to a conference and they hadn't told me. And I realized, why hadn't they told me? Yeah. And I wasn't quick to say, is this some sort of exclusion going on here? But there was a situation that occurred again and again and again. And I did say, I didn't realize that you were going to a conference. Did anybody think to tell me? And didn't really get much of a response. So there were situations like that where you just add up the dots and you just say, right, something is going on wrong here.
Hmm.
I'm not being included. Um, so we talk about inclusion all the time, and that was a situation where you're not invited to the party, right?
Mm,
And I clearly wasn't. So, and as a contractor, sometimes people, if they freeze you out, you're gonna leave.
mm.
It's the fastest way to get rid of someone. Freeze them out, and they'll start looking for new jobs or whatever. So I think that situation was occurring, right? And that was before I had even got my feet under the table,
Yeah.
that was happening really quickly.
And it was other black males in the organization who were also being freezed out as well.
Yeah,
And that is how you came to realize that it wasn't just a me thing. It was, you know, there's some commonality here.
yeah,
We're all black, we're all males, this is racism.
yeah.
And it was, yeah, it went on for months.
For
It wasn't an
months.
isolated event, as you said. It was constant exclusion. It was people kind of huddling around, speaking in different languages, like really, really trying to make sure that it was clear that you didn't belong and almost like we didn't want you here.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So I think that was an eye opener, and that was the moment when I always remember there's no HR for me here. There's no support.
No, though that I know you. I just really wonder whether if there was a HR, whether you would have gone to HR. I know what you mean about going
No,
to
no,
your
I
career counselor.
agree. I agree with you on this. That type of situation is very difficult to go to HR because we know that HR a lot of the time is not actually there to support you, and especially when they say they are, but they're not necessarily going to support you in that type of situation, or you wouldn't trust them to. And would I have trusted a HR team to support me in that situation? I think it's unlikely because once you go around making allegations
But you wouldn't have
and
made it
without
would
without hardcore evidence, you can't have evidence for this type of thing.
Yeah, I don't know whether it would have been a HR, whether you would have gone to HR, but I guess it's what you said earlier. If there was like a manager or something like that, maybe you would have gone to them, or I don't know. I
Yeah.
don't know. I guess overall, in your contracting experience, what did you learn?
I learned that it was more difficult than I thought it was going to be. It was harder work. Um, the things that replace performance reviews, politics when you're a perm employee are things like accounting. Because I had to learn all new accounting skills. I didn't understand how it all worked.
Right,
I had to learn it. Keeping my skills fresh, worrying about the end of my contract and when that's going to come, and will I get a renewal, and what roles will be available after that,
right, okay.
and the feeling of being watched. Uh,
So it was almost like you're replacing one set of worries
yeah,
with some others.
yeah, and I'm not going to say all contractors feel this. They definitely don't. But I felt this. I felt the feeling of being watched. Um,
Even after your
because
second role. So, I mean, even after your first role, sorry.
um,
When when you had more experience in the consulting game, did you still feel like you were constantly being, you said watched, but I think it's probably more that you felt like you was being judged
yeah,
on your performance.
yeah.
Did you still feel like that after your first role?
I think you feel it less, and I think it depends on how you performed or the reactions that you got from people.
Hmm.
In a role that I had after that, I took on a more responsible position in on the project. Because of that, I don't feel like I felt that I was being watched in that role.
Right, okay.
But yeah, I mean, what is not really thought about as well is keeping your skills fresh. My first contract, I was working with infrastructure that was in their own chosen data center.
Mm,
And I just felt as time was going by that my skills in the cloud were just becoming more and more stale.
right,
And then I felt like I want to do some roles in the cloud, but because I'm spending all my time here, my skills are drying up. And so, what am I going to do to keep my skills fresh? Am I going to have to work after work to do my own courses or my own practice at home to keep my cloud skills fresh? To do that, just so you can get another contract, is a lot of work. It's a lot more work than just having a perm role.
is it though? Because you could have a perm role, but still need to keep your knowledge fresh to be able to get the next consulting gig or to progress up in the company.
Yes, um, but
And you
a lot
still
of the
have to
time when
do
you,
that on the side. It's not like you're doing that, you're carving out time in your day job to do it.
well, I feel like a lot of the time if you're going to do that as a permanent employee, you can do it on company time, and they will support you to do that, especially if you're keeping your skills fresh to get the next role in your job, or to help you with what you're doing in the job or whatever.
Right.
Then they will support you to spend some time. They'll send you on a training course. They will give you resources, materials, people to talk to help you keep those skills fresh or to gain more skills or to get a
Mm,
qualification. Like in permanent roles, we see a lot of people who um, end up with certifications in certain areas, but in contracting, you don't have that time. That time that you spend at work is dedicated to doing the work they asked you to do.
right, okay.
And then you spend your whole day at work, let's say 9 to 6, you need to spend any time to learn your own skills or whatever you want to do, you need to spend at home doing that.
Right,
And
okay.
and so that could be hours and hours. So if you're going to keep your skills up to date or to learn a new skill, then you're going to have to do that. Like it's going to take a lot of time at home to do that. And that just racks up the effort. And I didn't realize that. I didn't feel that at the time when I was first going to contracting. I felt like, yeah, I feel confident. But as time went on, I felt less and less confident that I could keep my skills up to date.
Okay.
And
And
some contractors don't have that problem. I think because sometimes they make sure they take on roles that are at the cutting edge of
Hmm.
technology, especially if you're in IT, right? If you're in other areas like your BA or something like that, then maybe you don't feel such a burden in that type of way. But in technology, if you're doing IT, you either have to take roles that are cutting edge that keep your skills up to date, or you're gonna have to work on it afterwards.
Okay. Okay, that's interesting. I think that's something that we'll definitely kind of go back and revisit later on in this interview, around kind of keeping your skill set up to date.
Mm.
So obviously we know that you now have a permanent job. So what made you decide to go back and yeah, go back to that perm life?
At the time, I didn't necessarily make a decision that I wanted to leave contracting and go into perm. But at the time, there was some government regulations that were changing that were making it more difficult to do contracting. That may change in the future, but for now, it was just making things a bit more difficult. So for job security, I decided to start looking at perm jobs again. That just helped with financial security because perm jobs, you get paid, not depending on how many days you work, but just your contract. Um, it also getting a perm role helps with my confidence because, like I mentioned, keeping my skills up to date and not being able to do that on a role that was not cutting edge was reducing my confidence of getting new roles. And once I leave this role, let's say I'm in this role for a year, how long is it going to take me to get the next one? And am I confident that I can get the next one?
Yeah.
Because there is a lot of competition on the market. Like I mentioned in a previous episode, the feeling of being part of something, being part of something that is beyond a couple of months, building something in a company, having comrades in a way, some sort of team dynamic. You do have as a contractor, but it's not quite the same.
Mm.
Yeah. So those are the things that made me go back to perm. And then obviously the right opportunity came up. If the right opportunity comes up, then it makes it easier.
Okay, that makes sense. That makes sense. So, was it difficult to find a job? Like when you were trying to look for a perm role? 'Cause I'm just thinking you mentioned earlier that it's important to kind of keep your skills up to date in the job market
Mm.
and the difficulties of doing that alongside a contracting job. So now when you're going to look for a perm job, did you feel like you had to work to bring your skills up to date, to make your skills up to date, or was that not a factor at all with getting your job?
I think that's actually a really good question.
Thank you. I do try.
Because when you look for a contracting job, as I say, your skills need to be up to date. If they're asking for a particular skill, they're going to test you on that skill a
Right.
lot of the time in the interview. So you can feel nervous that if I'm going for an interview, I better know this thing inside out, and I better know it like off the top of my head, like I can recite the ABCs. Um, However, when you look for a perm job, they are much more relaxed about your skills. They're more worried about your experience, because they know, yeah, we're not hiring you for 2 months or for 6 months. We're
Yeah.
hiring you for potentially years and years and years.
Yeah.
So if you don't have the skills today, we can get you the skills. I just want to know that you've got the capacity to do these things or to learn these things. That you've got the right type of mentality, the right thinking. So skills wise, getting a perm job was easier, but
Right.
getting a perm job in other ways is harder because you've got to go through 5, 6 stages,
Yes.
different
Yes.
interviews,
Yes. Companies are slow to respond back
slow
to
to
you.
respond. Yeah,
Yeah, there's lots of, looking for a job is always challenging, isn't it?
yeah,
It's never straightforward.
yeah. And what I'm talking about again, it is skewed towards IT consulting and having certain IT
Mm.
skills, but there are other types of contracting, other people doing procurement, BA, all sorts of stuff, HR, contractors.
Yeah.
And so I really don't know the type of skills that they would have to maintain and keep up to date, but I'm sure there's things that they will have to do as well.
And is there anything else that you want to bring up or discuss in the contracting space? I've got one more question, but it'd be good to see if there's anything that I may have missed.
Yeah, I think one thing that's important to mention that I learnt is the contracting market is really ruled and controlled by recruiters.
Right,
Um, Quite different to the permanent job market. In permanent jobs, you can go to a company's website and apply for a job. You can apply directly, you can be referred by someone who already works there. Um, the jobs at these companies are posted on websites, Indeed, and all those kind of places, right? But for contracting, it just doesn't work like that. There are recruitment websites that are just solely for contracting
mm,
or specialize in it, and there are recruiters that do perm jobs and contracting jobs. But contracting jobs at the end customer or company are not advertised by that company.
right,
So you have to go through a recruiter. And so now, if you don't have any good relationships with with recruiters and you're coming in brand new, then you're going to have to start building that. And it's quite a difficult thing because when you deal with recruiters, you kind of get the same sort of thing. You get a salesy approach. They try and sell you the role. They don't really describe the role very well
right.
because they don't really understand how it works or what's going on.
Yeah, because they're not in that industry.
Yeah, they use buzzwords to try and get you interested. And then they put you in front of a customer and you either sink or swim, right? Because it goes like that, sometimes it can be quite difficult to be put in front of the right role for you.
Mm.
And yeah, I think that's something to mention, important thing to mention.
And I think that is, I agree with you. I think that's an important thing to mention. But I remember you also saying last week
Yeah,
that it's also your network as well that can help you to get
yeah.
roles.
So it's highly recommended that you get your roles through your network. Um, if you've got contacts that will get you roles or can help push you forward for a role,
Mm,
then definitely do that. You will get better roles that way. Um, but for me, from my understanding anyway, the only the best ways to get roles are either through a contractor or through your network.
right.
And through your network is will definitely get you a better position. Through the contract, through the recruiter, yeah, you're gonna have some issues. Um, Sometimes if you interview for a job and you don't get the job, for whatever reason, the recruiter will not put you forward for another job. And recruiters do that all the time, even for perm jobs. I'm not sure if many people have this experience. Maybe you have experience like this or anything where a recruiter puts you forward for a perm job, you don't get the job or the interview's not perfect or whatever, and
That's
you
it. You
won't,
don't hear from the recruiter
yeah,
again.
that recruiter, you'll never hear from them again.
Yeah,
And I
I've
had that
had that
experience.
happen to me as well for obviously for perm jobs.
Yeah,
If there's any recruiters out there listening, please DM us, email us at ordinaryblackprofessionals@gmail.com or ordinaryblackprofessionals on Instagram and let us know why that's the case.
yeah,
I do not know why recruiters do that, but it's happened to me time and time again.
yeah. And I had the feeling of basically being blacklisted
Mm.
by recruiters. So they would sometimes put me in front of a job that is just
I wonder,
not what I was looking for at all.
um,
And then I would not hear back from them because it just wasn't what I was looking for.
yeah, I wonder if that's because of the feedback they've given, sorry, the feedback that the company has given back to the recruiter. So if the feedback has been, oh, Stefan's interviewed really poorly, he doesn't like he's got the expertise, he is not someone we would ever hire,
Yeah,
then they're like, oh, I'm not going to spend, from the recruiter's point of view, like, well, I'm not going to spend any time with him because the feedback has been so poor.
yeah, yeah, maybe. And I understand, they work on a commission um, base most of the time, or at least that I know of. So, for commission purposes, they just want to put the guy in front that's just going to guarantee the job, really,
Yeah.
going to get them their commission. So. that might be the case, but there's a lot of people out there who are also suitable for roles that maybe you could position. Maybe you could position them for one role, they won't get it, but you can position them again for another one. Um, so yeah, yeah. And I've heard also some recruiters, I spoke to some who had left their previous recruitment company and set up their own.
Mm,
And when I spoke to them, they said the reason they set up their own is because they're not really empowered to position people for certain roles because they want to guarantee the commission. Whereas
yeah.
if they own the company and they are recruiting, then they can be a bit more flexible, get to know people a bit more, and do things their own way. I did have a recruiter that said that to me, but I'd like to hear from a few more. So yeah, and I think another thing as well is that I did have some good roles. I had a lot of fun on some roles.
A lot of
My
responsibility.
responsibilities improved, and I had a lot of things to do. I enjoyed my time. I made the money on those roles. I wanted to stay longer and longer and longer, but you know your contract's the end date's gonna come soon. So yeah, there were some really good roles. I had a lot of fun. So there was very good times as well as contractor.
So I did say that I had one more question left,
Yeah.
but actually, as you were speaking, I thought of another question.
Okay.
So the penultimate question, are you able to negotiate your day rate? And if so, did you ever do that?
So when you go for a contracting role, a lot of the time, 99% of the time, they advertise the day rate.
Okay, so
Yeah.
and that's very different to perm jobs
Yeah.
because they always ask you, oh, what are you looking for? And then they put you on the spot, and then you're like, oh, I'm looking for 50, but they're only going to give you 35 to 40, so you know that it's not for you.
Yeah, it's
It's
because it works very differently. Like your day rate, again, it's a business to business transaction. So
yeah,
the person who pays the day rate and decides what it is actually the end project, not necessarily the company, but the project.
yeah,
It comes out of a project budget most of the time. So they've budgeted how much they're going to pay a contractor,
right,
right? Let's say £500. They're not moving from the budget, yeah, unless some miraculous reason, but most
right.
of the
Okay, so
time
that's why they're
they've budgeted
advertising
that.
it
Yeah.
at, okay, because, okay, that makes sense.
So they put that in their budget. They think they're going to pay you that, so they advertise it. And so when a recruiter calls you up for a position, you can, and they will tell you straight away on the first call what the day rate is,
Mm.
and you can reject it right there and then if it's not what you want, or you can ask for more. But most of the time, the recruiters will say we can't get you more, or they could get you more, but it will only be a little bit more because
Extra £25 or something.
um maybe 50 to £100, depending on what it
So
is.
I thought that's quite a
100,
significant day rate increase.
£100 a lot
Yeah,
more, yeah.
as
But
goes from 500 to 600.
it can, but it depends because let's say I talked about this budget, right? And let's say it was £500. Let me increase that to £700, right? So because they've come through a recruiter, the recruiter wants his cut as well.
Mm,
So the end company will pay £700 for you. The recruiter will pay you £500, and they'll advertise to you £500, and the recruiter will take £200
mm,
on in their pocket. So every day you get paid, the recruiter picks up some
yeah,
money. So that's how that transaction works. So if they really want to secure that job, let's say that job's been hanging around for 2 months, they've not been able to fill it, right? Then they might pay you a little bit more to get you to fill it so they can not have this job hanging around because they don't want to deal with it,
right.
right?
Okay,
And they will
that
take
makes sense.
less profit.
Okay, so they're not actually going back and negotiating it with the project.
Yeah.
They're just lowering the recruiters lowering their margins.
Yeah, they can also negotiate with the project,
But then more
but
than likely, there's
yeah,
not going to
there's
increase because they've already factored in what
yeah,
they can afford for,
yeah.
like
So
they've already
it's
got
a
their budget
yeah, it's a
to and fro in to
yeah,
get
it's a
it
to and
right.
a fro, and yeah.
Okay, that's interesting though, around because I know a lot of the time when we talk, I think we've mentioned it before on episodes that you should negotiate your salary, negotiate pay
Mm,
rises and promotions and all that other stuff. But actually, in the contracting world, you don't negotiate. No, there's not like a negotiation isn't so much of a thing because
No, I still think it's quite a thing. You'll get something out of it. You can get something out of it. I did negotiate on my second role,
right,
right?
okay,
But I got £15 more out of it.
okay,
So it was a little something. And when you put that on a day rate, it does add up.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, it does add up.
it does add up. So yeah, you can negotiate a little bit, but someone is going to have to take a hit.
Okay, okay. And now my final question is how do you go about looking for a good accountant?
Yeah,
What recommendations do you have that kind of makes up a good accountant?
I think the first thing is you need to ask other people and take some recommendations. There are
Okay.
loads of accountants out there.
Mm.
Um,
And not all of them are 5-star rated.
Definitely not. So take some recommendations from other people that you trust or other contractors about who they use. Um, that's first number one. And I did that. I took a recommendation from a contractor and I used his accountant.
Mm.
Now, the second thing is you want to go for accountants who have experience of doing accounting for contractors.
Mm.
But what I learned is that accounting is massively different depending on industry.
Okay.
So if I'm running a business, let's say I'm selling electrical items, the accounting for that is completely different to accounting for contractors.
Mm.
There are so many other things and assets and things like that to take into account. There are so many rules out there for accounting from HMRC that accountants who specialize in a particular area will
Mm.
know the rules for that particular area, but they will forget the rules for other areas. So you want to go for accountants that remember and know the rules for contractors. Yeah, and so once you've done that, talk to them. You need to have a conversation with the contractor that you're going to choose, with the accountant that you're going to choose. Talk to them, make sure that you have a good sense of that one, they're listening to you, and two, that they're answering your questions politely. If you have the feeling that they're trying to rush you, you're new to the game, and they're trying to say, yeah, 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 I know it all. Don't worry, I've got it. That's not the accountant for you.
Okay.
If you're new to the game, right, and you want someone who's going to explain things to you and help you through the process, get an accountant that will take the time to actually talk to you in a nice way,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. I think that's very, very important because ultimately, as we said in our last episode, your accountant is responsible for getting that job, but ultimately you as an individual are accountable.
Yes.
You're the one who's going to go to prison or experience fines if your accountant hasn't done their job properly. So you
Yeah.
need to understand, take the time and understand exactly what your accountant is saying to you and what they're doing so you don't get in trouble with HMRC.
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. What I do not recommend anyone to do is use online accountants.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Use someone you can talk to on the phone because accountancy is just too complicated for
I,
you to use an online free accountancy software
I didn't
or
even know there was that.
yeah, or you can do ones that you pay for it, but it does it all for you automatically. It's just not gonna get you good enough tax rebates or whatever it may be. You need to talk to somebody with the qualifications, the expertise, with the understanding.
Mm,
Yeah, you need to talk to somebody for sure. And I've heard many people say this as well.
okay.
It's very important to don't use the online ones.
Yeah. Okay, well, I guess I think we'll wrap it up there.
And if anybody has any questions or anything that you want us to address, then just let us know. Find us on Instagram or Twitter about contracting or email us.
At the ordinary black professionals at
Yeah.
gmail.com.
And there'll be a message at the end of this podcast giving you all the details on that. So,
Okay. And next week, we have Danapo, the founder of Tido, coming on and talking about her company. So stay tuned to that. It's a really interesting podcast. So we're interviewing her about her fashion company, talking about how she is solving the problem for fuller busted women out there and providing clothing that's fit for purpose.
mm,
So stay tuned for that next week. We're really, really excited for the episode to drop because you'll listen and hear how much of an entrepreneur Delapo is and just how she's navigated setting up her own business and she just makes it really real and raw for everyone.
Yeah.
So, yeah, a plug for our next week's episode.
Until then,
Until then, we will speak to you all next week. Bye, guys.
bye.
If you have any questions or dilemmas, email us on ordinaryblackprofessionals@gmail.com, or we can be found on Instagram and Twitter at ordinaryblackprofessionals. Also, don't forget to follow us, subscribe, and leave a rating and comment.